Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. I'm tired. That was the title from last week, and it is true on a physical level today. Not really because of anything that, like more stress added on top of what was going on. In fact, dare I say, I have resolved some of that. For starters, the bit that I mentioned briefly about Alpha Witch Academy, I actually just casually mentioned I was doing backgrounds for something else to Aiden, and he actually guessed it and seemed to be relatively okay with it. Although the reasons that he was okay with it, I guess I might have to swing back to. But yeah, in the meantime, we've been preparing eulogy details because my nan's funeral is actually on tomorrow. Say on tomorrow. It is tomorrow. So yeah, that's the day is finally arriving. So we got everything ready, and we've got all the people who are speaking. We've decided the timings and allocated ourselves ample amounts of time to make sure, you know, if anyone has overcome with emotion, or one of us, like me, decides to waffle, then that is accounted for, basically. Just realised walking around here on a school day probably not the best idea. At least my timing was a bit off. It's a public footpath, don't get me wrong, it's just probably don't want to swing there. By there, risk ending up getting in trouble for filming in a school. You know, sixth form. Okay. Like, by all means, I'll film outside of a school as people exiting. But, yeah, I don't know. Also, who knows, some of the teachers might actually know me there. Right, what was I? Which I can say now, because obviously I'm not there anymore. Right. I didn't say the name of the place. I showed a building, but you have to know what place it actually is first to recognize the building. Anyway, whatever. So, what was I thinking about? Yeah, so most of this week was essentially catching up with those things. So the speech details done. Some of the redirections for the musical scenes have been done. I'm still working through the lines of scene 3. Although Aiden has actually pointed out to me, because we've had a few debates about that particular scene, because it was added by me in post-production, and weirdly enough, usually whenever a new scene is added to something, I'm a bit skeptical, particularly to the mutant girl, because sometimes Aiden will think of some other ideas when we go back through the scripts post hoc, and he will then say he will then try and, I guess, embellish it. I guess that may be because of the last time I went through the first 3 episodes, which used to be a movie. Most of the acts weren't really structured time-wise the same way. You expect a lot of the action to take place in Act 2, but for some reason we took a lot of time to actually set everything up. Which is why Episode 2 is shorter than Episode 1, because that was Act 2 and Act 1. Yeah, so that was an issue, but and at one point, actually, we went through the seasons, the episode script to see if more length could actually be, if more stuff could be fleshed out. I ended up instead in removing a scene entirely because it was completely pointless. So episode 4 used to have a different scene that was supposed to set up the actual season as episode 1, but that was completely redundant because we just saw everything that happened during that time, and it was all exposition. So most of the time it actually backfires, and I'm trying to cut down on content to make sure that the other episodes are going on. However, season 3, episode 3, scene 3 is an exception, because without putting too many spoilers into it, there are some things that happened while I was editing episode 1 where I thought of a particular motif, a musical motif, that would then pay off, so that then pay off and actually have what was I going to say? That's slipped my mind now. Yeah, it would pay off, and then one person's arc for what was the movie would have been wrapped up, and I'd be able to actually move on and work towards their own happiness and self-fulfillment much more easily. Now that all sounds great. However, it was under the illusion that there would be no issues, because the particular artist from the of the musical motif, CG5, in times before, whenever I would use a CG5 song, it would just come up as, okay, the content's been detected, but there are no restrictions to you. I was like, okay, all right, it's just acknowledging the fact that it's there, and you know, licensing wise, whatever, okay, no restrictions, it's just being honest, fine. And then when I got monetized, you know, for that brief week and a half, yeah, that's when we realized, okay, now it's being flagged. It was just because I wasn't monetized, there were no restrictions, but now that I am, they automatically have been applied because it was flagged all a time ago. So that put a spanner in the works. Aiden turned out to be right in this instance, and because he warned me against the CG5 stuff, and I said, okay, look, no restrictions, it's fine. It won't matter, and then it did. So now that's why Aiden is worried, because he doesn't want the video to get demonetized immediately upon its publication, especially because with musical episodes, in my case, they're the ones that I put the most effort into, and therefore the ones that are also the ones people see all the way through. It's a whole thing. So ideally, they would be the ones that provide the most revenue. So yeah, kind of important to have those be copyright free. So we're debating taking that scene out, because again, it was added, but we actually had that version already without the scene in there. However, because I actually made, I actually asked for so many redirections before we talked about that, I feel like it's at least having that conversation in there, even if we have to do a cheap, oh, this following sequence has been removed due to copyright, then that'll be worth it. And then we'll just release the other one as like a full version or something. Tell all the reactors to check the link so they can actually include that if they so desire, if they're not worried about being copyright claimed themselves. You know, probably way more helpful than some people who made their videos back before copyright restrictions were so bad, and so and therefore did not have to worry as much. Kind of the older Bridge series, which, by the way, speaking of that was a fun Yu-Gi-Oh stream yesterday. I've never been too into Yu-Gi-Oh, but I love the Lucariba, and I love a Bridge series in general, so of course I've watched Yu-Gi-Oh! The Bridge series, and of course that meant I was that meant I was very much in the mood to quote that religiously during the stream itself. Of course. And that's also why I invited Shani there, and Ghosty was just one who recommended the video. I was already going through I was already binge watching that series anyway, and so it just kind of conveniently fell because according to, I don't know if Ghosty said that I introduced her to Lord Karibo, but no, she said then after, so I think I've been in Yu-Gi-Oh circles and not none of Lord Karibo, so kind of two things at once. But either way, that's why it was the stars aligned, and that was a really fun stream. I mean, don't worry, I was exhausted because, you know, I had an early wake up to go through UGs. Well, I didn't really wake up. I woke up at the same time as normal, but didn't have much time to psych myself up and prepare myself for the day, let's say, which is why, again, I'm tired physically, not so much mentally this time. Even though I still do have those other videos to actually get through, and I think I'll be able to progress through those today, relatively speaking anyway. We'll see how things turn out, because actually I wanted to have one of those ready for the next time I had a family gathering, and that of course is tomorrow, but that may not actually happen. But who knows. I was also promised a video from the person in question, but oh well, we'll we can suppose bring that up in between remembering all the many different stories everyone's going to talk to about my nan. And I've been warned that I will be asked about a lot of things that I mention in my eulogy, since my one is by far the longest, longer than the other ones combined, yeah, I'm going to be in her own gestures. She used to do that quite a lot, actually. Like when my mum and aunt would be talking because we just arrived at the house, and it was kind of time to take it was my mum's and my shift of, you know, looking after her, and my aunt was giving the updates. She would look at me sometimes. I just go, which is pretty hypocritical coming from her, because she will talk relentlessly. Well, it depends if like on her energy levels. I'm not gonna bother going that way. Again, too much space. I'm just being backed into a corner for this Walking Wednesday. Yeah, yeah, for the most part, when she was good and proper. Is this a footpath? I have not been down here before. Okay. So yeah, whenever she was, you know, good and proper and in peak condition, she would be doing this. Yep, like the actual thing, talking. So yeah, kind of hypocritical, but oh well. None of us minded, mostly because no one else noticed. So, right, back to this week. There was something else that happened actually also yesterday. Just so happens that yesterday was the busy day, apparently. Go down there. Sorry. A new path is revealed whenever I'm backed into a corner. That's what I almost said yesterday. When I'm backed into a corner, I do my best work. That would have been referring to editing, which I was talking about, because yesterday was a day that my dad told me to keep free, because he wanted me to be around for this interview session that he was doing with Theoden, actually. If you remember Theoden, that was the head of Pivotl. Or was Theoden the one I was talking to? No, I don't think I actually called her Theoden. It was the guy. Yeah, the CEO of the company that I did of Pivotl, basically, and he was that was the. If people don't remember that, it was. Oh my goodness. Okay. Not going down there, too much of a downhill. I'll go down this path. Yeah, he was the one who was the eventual voice actor in that particular video, because none of the other voices that I proposed were to the person's satisfaction. So unfortunately they asked for a female voice, otherwise I would have just done it myself. It's one of those things. But yeah, so my dad was doing an interview. He was conducting the interview, and the interview was of Theoden, and was all about this paper that he had written, Theoden had written, and or to do with stuff about the about defense, which I can actually mention because A, it's going to go public anyway, and and B, apparently this is all public information regardless, so nothing was overshared, you know. So so yeah, I mean, some names were omitted, so as long as I don't say, I don't know, like Albert Haig or something like that, then people will be like, oh no, I said the name. I'm kidding. I'm joking. It's not actually Albert Haig. It's something else completely. I think I'm thinking of Field Marshal Haig from Blackadder or something like that. I don't know if his name was Albert or not. All of the defense people watching are like, put a search up for Albert Haig right now. all the spies, international spies. No, okay. Right. So yeah, names were omitted, but yeah, for the most part it was just, oh, okay, this is where I am. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I got to actually witness there was these two guys from this company that we looked at the show reel of, and they are very, very proficient and quite varied, and they but so compared to what they normally do, this was small potatoes for them. So yeah, they set up 3 different cameras. I watched them as they struggled with one of them overheating, which my theory is because it had a blaring light coming straight towards it, but I don't know. And also just and also how they actually set up the structure itself. I mean, if I ever do interviews, then I know the format now. So that was that was really nice to see. And some of the time, actually, one of the guys took the time to explain to me some of the things that were going on with how the cameras were being set up and such. I'm not necessarily ever think I'll become like a camera operator or anything, although who knows at this point, because the editing thing just sort of happened, which I explained to them, and I actually was able to talk to them about about what I do, because they asked me, oh, you know, what's the stuff that you do, considering that the thing they knew about me was that I did editing for companies. And for myself, so I mentioned YouTube, I mentioned Gacha particularly, and talked about the community and why it's got all the opportunities it has and stuff like that. So one of them even said, oh, I've got to search up this thing later. Said the name wrong, so I said, okay, this is how you spell it. My phone wouldn't load, so I couldn't show any examples per se. But yeah, I always love, I've mentioned this before, but I love talking to adults about Gacha, or just in general people who haven't heard about it. I mean, except I guess my cousin made it a little bit difficult because she was already talking about Toka Life World, and was very adamant about that being the definitive application for this kind of thing, which I don't know about that necessarily, but we'll see. Again, it was an interesting thing. But yeah, for the most part, when I talk to anyone, particularly like either if they're older than me, like those guys, or my own age, like people at university, when I did that presentation, yeah, they've never heard about this stuff, so they just go in without having like any sort of, I guess prejudice would be the word for Gacha itself. And it is refreshing to just do that. And I remember one time, actually, even some people my parents' age, and some of their work friends of several decades occasionally, and just getting to talk to them about how Gacha actually works, and being able to pitch it in a way where they actually seemed, maybe they weren't going to check it out themselves necessarily, but they were interested by the concept. And I love doing that. And that's one of those things that you don't get when people have already seen Gacha by themselves. I guess that's why I'm able to convert you know, so to speak, so many people to the ways of gacha, because that's just, if I present it in a certain way, they'll be interested, kind of like Aiden, fittingly. I do remember Ghosty actually mentioned something this week in one of our Code Lyoko watch days, which we haven't done in a long time, actually. Almost a year. That one of the for Monster Compendium, her upcoming gacha series, that that some of her friends who had heard of gacha were asking, you know, why do this in gacha? Why not something else? And her reason was because I don't have an animation budget, or I'm not good with animation. Well, I mean, she has done animation before. I've seen some of the demos examples that she did at trade school. But yeah, overall, again, gacha just makes that a lot simpler, and it has an existing community to latch onto. So why wouldn't you give it a go? Well, because of the reputation, and that's what they were thinking of. That's the thing with gacha, you have infinite potential, you don't have to just do the bad stuff. Thank goodness for that, actually. Considering the app's target audience. And, but yeah, I had the same thing with Mutant Girl several times. I think including from Aiden himself, but also BB at some points. But yeah, I do think it still very much exists in the medium it's supposed to. I'm glad for it to continue there. What it may do is change formats of gacha after the next episode. But that, of course, is a story for another time. So I'm going to go get back to getting some food and doing, I guess, some more editing. So please leave a like or dislike, because your opinion matters. I was going to done this already. And on that note, until next time, farewell.